Morgan and some of the other things for that. So I think Ms. Ellis Stewart said we want all of our schools to be places where we'd send our own kids, or grandparents would send us, what have you. How much of how our schools are viewed, well, I guess this is not a question, because this is kind of, how much of how our schools are viewed is just perception versus reality? And just to give a little push to go, what role does the board play in reinforcing those perceptions? And I'll give you an example, kind of like, I guess Mr. Morgan said, we had one student, and I think it was all of the county, so charter, CMS, if I'm not mistaken, who won a Morehead scholarship. And that school is one that you generally, when you see it on TV, it's not for anything to you hear about it. But out of all the 27 high schools, is that right? All of our high schools, all of the charter schools, all of the private schools in this county, the one person who's going to arguably the best university in the country, full scholarship. Is that but I mean, just to use that as an
that's one. Yeah, that's one small example. Around history, you're going to have that. It's based on, your perception is your reality, but they give actual information of incidents and what is happening. I can ask the rest of you, do you get that kind of conversation?
I do. A lot of it after we have a reassignment hearing. Because they see my name at the bottom of the letter and they think that I made that decision by myself.
I get calls all the time, Ruby, for different kinds of situations, from my richest, what they call the richest school at Hoff, down to my most diverse school at Mallard Creek. I get more calls about Hopewell than any other school because there is a public perception that it's not as good as your house.
It is the perception, and my daughter talks a lot about her middle school, just because of their location. People tend to think that they have rich kids in there. They are very diverse. And, she said I have to school them on what the makeup of my school is, because they think, when they hear the name and they relate it to the location, it's like you have these kind of kids. But they don't. They have high numbers of homeless children that are there, high numbers of very transient kids that are there, and high numbers of exceptional children that are there. And that's the second leg of the question I want to ask Scott. When you're looking at the schools with the high numbers of economically disadvantaged children, also can we flesh out how many of those children in those schools also are labeled exceptional children? Because that's another layer that's on there.
Yeah, absolutely. As part of that student demographic information.
Yes.
And the curious question that I had last time, if you had time to roll over it, is looking at the information that came about the number of high schools that we will need. Where are they coming from, these homeschool consortiums, and out of some of the charter schools and private schools and that kind of thing? That I would think that we are getting some students who, after they reach that high school level,
they learn from high school, real high school level.
Yeah, there's multiple responses to that. Yeah, absolutely.
And that should be.
Yeah.
George, one of the responses I have to your questions, when I put them together, both of them, is that every time over 9.5 years that I've seen some sort of comparison between something like economically disadvantaged students and on grade levels, the lines were almost perfectly aligned to the higher the economic disadvantage, the lower the score was. It seems to me, and that means that you look at our data and you would say, I don't care what the state says, I don't want to go to school with a whole lot of kids who are economic disadvantaged, because typically there are not as many of those kids on grade level as there are at high wealth schools. And that is, in fact, we had an outside consultant one time who said, yeah, it's hard to use the free and reduced lunch number because people don't like it, but the truth is we have to manufacture something that would be hard to explain to get to the same correlations. It seems to me that that is something the Board of Education has control over, because it is student assignment. We choose where those kids are going. So where we see that a school repeatedly has lower on the grade level students every year, we ought to be doing something more than what we're doing so that it changes. And those schools don't, they've changed over the years because we've added schools, but some of the schools have remained almost exactly the same places on those charts. So we can do something about that if we will. Now, what that something is, we still haven't figured out. We don't. I think it is true we don't have the money to make Project Lift work everywhere if it's working and going to be the success that a lot of people still hope it will be. We don't have the money to make a beacon, or we have strategic staffing. We've done a lot of different things to try to do things, and it's sometimes bump things up for a couple of years, but often it sort of falls back into that same pattern after we've had an influx of either principal or teacher or other folks, and then we kind of get back to the norm, which is the same difficulties, behavioral difficulties, or lack of opportunities in schools and in families that we have, and when we collect all that in one place, it just makes it a whole lot harder to educate, it seems to me. So, in the big picture, we can't make money. We can't even go find probably enough property available in the county where we need it in order to build schools that we might need to build, because we haven't been proactive enough even there to land bank all this stuff. But we can't do that. So what do? Do we throw up our hands and say we can't do anything because we don't have those things, or do we say, look, we'll have to do something with either the teachers or the kids or where they go or how they go? It seems to me that that's the only thing left for us to do. And I don't have an answer, but we don't have the money to have 1 teacher to 12 kids in every school in the district, or in the schools that really need it the most. We just don't have that kind of money. We can't do that right now. So what do? Do we just leave it alone? And that's what's not acceptable to me, is to leave it the way it is. And I trust not only the Board of Education, but I trust the staff. We've got really a great staff, not only in this room or on the phone, but a really great staff of people. I think that we know some things to do, but it's when we get stuck in the confines of this is what we have. And yeah, a lot of us just want to go to school close to home. Get that. But what does that mean if that school for me is one that I cannot imagine my child going to? What do I do now? And I can't get in a magnet program because I lose on the lottery, and I can't get the board to approve something because we say that it's not that it doesn't rise to the level of a transfer or a change there. I mean, so we're stuck. And now we have the opportunity of charter schools, and they're proliferating, growing here more. So that's an option. Homeschool is always an option. But we're the only group, the board's the only group that can say, this is where student A is going to go to school. Nobody else can tell them where to go to school except us. Isn't that true? Isn't that our responsibility as a board? We set a student assignment plan. We work out a lottery plan for the magnets and say this is the way it works. Nobody else comes in and says that's the way it works. It's the Board of Education. This is our big lever that makes some changes, where repeatedly there are these, and we have it even in our policy ADA about equity, the predictive links that really are there and they haven't changed. They're not changing. So why do we keep trying to do the same thing the same way? Or try something new, and I'm grateful for all the new we try. But when do we ever get the new out to everybody that needs it instead of just one segment of the county or one 15 schools or whatever? So, I mean, that's a frustration of mine. But I think this is precisely the board's role to figure this one out. Not alone, that's why these people in the room are with us, because they want to hear what we're thinking, and they have things to tell us too. In fact, at the end, I'm going to give you something from a couple of these people that asked me to hand something to the board members before they leave. But, so that's my response. Tim, you look like you want to say more. Rhonda, or whoever's left, Erica, you want to say anything?
No, the one thing I would, I'm sorry. The one thing I would add is, I think that this is a really good time for us to embark upon a really the in-depth magnet look, because we do, before we decide about student assignment, we need to figure out what we're going to do with magnets. And one of the things that I've been bantering around in my head, and Tom, I know you've discussed this, is why do we have a 100% cap on magnets that they can't go 10 or 20% over and have mobile students? We're in a mobile pinch all over the county. So I'm going to throw that out there and we'll lob it out, because if we allow 10 or 20% overage in mobiles in our magnet schools, we would open up choice opportunities so that every student would have an alternative to their home school. But our first priority needs to be making every school a great place to be.
Okay, thank you, Rhonda.
I'm sure the magnet team just winced on that comment, but and Scott, you too. But I think we've got to look at it. If we're going to be 130 and 140% over, we've got to look at magnets.
He's nodding his head.
We'll talk later.
Okay, Erica, did you have something?
I was just going to say, I hope that one of the things we look at is grade level configurations, particularly at the elementary school level, but I know that also has a capital component to it as well, so we would be limited, but I'm very curious about using some of that. Bless you.
Okay, all right.
I didn't hear her last part.
Grade level configurations, especially like as
So maybe K-8,
pre-K2,
Okay.
you know, at the smaller school doing
Okay.
something, pairing maybe two elementary schools, pre-K2,
Gotcha.
3, 4, 5, something like that.
We did that once.
We've done it. We have.
Yeah. You and I are the dinosaurs there. Oh, Ruby's a dinosaur.